You win some, you lose some, and these directional disappointments are definitely less hit, more miss. Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 terrible movies by great British directors. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at films that just don't live up to the standards set by their British or part British directors. Whether they instantly flopped, were ultimately forgotten, were critically derided, or become box office bombs, if they're the dud in a director's otherwise impressive canon, they're up for consideration today. Number 10, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Kenneth Branagh.
All these strange and ancient books. You'll be an even greater doctor than your father.
Although widely considered to be one of the closest adaptations to the book, Kenneth Branagh's reimagined literary classic was still not well received. Resembling something more like a Meatloaf video featuring a sewn-together Helena Bonham Carter, it certainly wasn't bursting at the seams with anything close to the iconic levels of horror it promised, with the Frankenstein tale feeling more monstrosity than monster.
No! No! No!
So much was the disappointment, the original screenwriter, Frank Darabont, even stated that it was the best script he had ever written, but the worst film he had ever seen. Number 9, Domino, Tony Scott.
I need that web link. I need that web link. The J-Lo concert's probably sold out already.
The late great Tony Scott made some seriously good films during his career, with hits including Top Gun and Crimson Tide. This movie, however, will be remembered for all the wrong reasons. A biopic of model-turned-bounty hunter Domino Harvey, a part played perhaps surprisingly well by Keira Knightley, it was heavily criticised upon its release.
We're the one of that bitch on the team, huh? You don't like what I'm doing?
I can hear you.
A lot of the reviews took aim at the overuse of Scott's otherwise trademark fast cuts and camera work. Overall, the film's quick pace and probable over-editing make it an uneasy watch, especially as it's over 2 hours long.
So now we're back where we started.
We sure are.
Number 8, The Brothers Grimm, Terry Gilliam.
She's dead.
Yeah, very. Of course she is.
She's dead.
Certainly a subject full of potential, the former Python's presentation of the famous fairy tale siblings fell way short, and was far from enchanting or magical.
I'll just try to be gentle. Now show me the way back to Angelica's house.
Usually known for creating visually appealing movies full of quirky details and captivating stories, Terry Gilliam failed to conjure up such charm for this one.
Why don't we go this way?
Why? Because even the animals would never come this way.
Led by Matt Damon and Heath Ledger, the end product is messy and disjointed. Though perhaps victims of their own success, with such a high-caliber cast and director, everyone expected much better. And that self-regenerating mud monster who swallows a small boy is one of the most bizarre movie creatures ever. Number 7, Waltzes from Vienna, Alfred Hitchcock.
Goodbye.
Until tomorrow.
Remembered much more for his iconic horrors and thrillers, this is one film that rarely gets a mention when Hitchcock is brought up in conversation. Well, this and his similarly subpart Juno and the Paycock, a far cry from Psycho and the Birds, Waltzes from Vienna was Hitchcock's venture into musicals. But it was also both soppy and dull. He even admitted himself that the film was made during the lowest ebb of his career, and that the only reason he worked on it was because he had nothing else in his schedule for that year.
Pistols at 25 paces.
Number 6, The Beach, Danny Boyle.
But how do we get from there to there?
We swim.
Boyle has since stated that halfway through shooting this, he realised that he didn't like any of the characters. Which says it all, really. The Turn of the Millennium Washout is based on the thrilling Alex Garland novel of the same name, but it fails to match Garland's pulsating high drama. Although visually appealing, critics called it a rushed and shallow story, as it seemed to muddle genres but satisfy none. Compared to Boyle's typically high standard, it doesn't come close to the likes of Trainspotting and 28 Days Later. A Life Less Ordinary might have featured today, but The Beach disappointed just a little bit more.
I was playing my own game now, and I had absolutely no reason to go back.
Number 5, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, Mike Newell. What could be more visually confusing than Jake Gyllenhaal with an English accent dressed like a Middle Eastern warrior? It's hard to believe that this is from the same mind as the man who directed 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. On the very surface, it has elements of entertainment, but lacks any sort of depth. And it ultimately goes down as an especially lackluster video game adaptation.
Noble Dastan, abandoning a helpless woman in the wilderness. What does your precious honor have to say about that?
Overall, it's a movie that relies too heavily on action and long, drawn-out fight scenes, which eventually become overkill, and isn't remotely reflective of Mike Newell's best work.
Let me go.
I'm not letting you go!
I wish we could have been together.
Number 4, Pan, Joe Wright.
Is it from your mum? What does she say? I can't.
It's the origin story that nobody ever asked for. Joe Wright's and everyone else's talents for that matter were wasted in this production. Its jumbled story is all over the place, and at times it just feels a bit too weird and nowhere near as captivating as the makers probably hoped it would be.
You win, you live. You lose.
I get the idea.
Even a bearded Hugh Jackman couldn't save it from being commercially unsuccessful, with Pan reportedly grossing less than its production budget. Ouch. If the hackneyed CGI isn't enough to put you off, then the Smells Like Teen Spirit sequence will likely make you seasick.
It makes me smile. I found it hard, so hard to find. Oh well, whatever. Never mind.
Number 3, A Good Year, Ridley Scott.
The house you get to keep his house.
Devoid of all the humour and charm that you'd usually expect from a rom-com, Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe's often solid pairing fell completely flat here. Even worse than when they paired up for Robin Hood, A Good Year was anything but good. Despite Crowe's acting pedigree, it's almost painful to watch him attempt light comedy in an English accent. He just seems so far out of his depth. You have to wonder why anyone thought this would ever be a good idea.
My God. She's fantastic.
A Good Year did receive an EDA Special Mention Award, but it was under the category of Hall of Shame. Need we say more? Number 2, Swept Away, Guy Ritchie.
Have you no dignity?
From the man who provided us with iconic gangster beat-em-ups like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, comes this shocking piece of cinema. And while Madonna's acting isn't exactly Oscar-worthy, it's not the only thing wrong with this film, which is miles away from Ritchie's best work.
Take what?
You need to take the octopus.
Look! Ah!
A remake of a well-regarded 1974 Italian picture, it possesses none of the original quality, leaving audiences breathing a quiet sigh of relief once the end credits roll. Saying that, not many people even saw the film. It bombed at the box office, and 5 Golden Raspberry Awards in one year show just how much of a shipwreck it was.
Fascinating.
Number 1, Lay the Favourite, Stephen Frears.
Hi.
Hi, are you Dink?
I am Dink. Yes, you must be Beth.
Multi-award winning Stephen Frears will, with little doubt, always be remembered for his finest films. But this one wasn't one of them. An out-of-character, disappointing drama, it boasts a stellar cast which includes Hollywood heavyweights Bruce Willis and Catherine Zeta-Jones, but it never really gets going, before limping toward a desperately dull finish.
You know, I could be a lot richer in general if I'd have made most of my decisions based on money. My hugest defect.
The story sees the free-spirited Beth, played by Rebecca Hall, become entwined in the world of gambling. But then the blandness takes over, and the slim storyline fades. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so we'll just leave this movie there and move on.
I do not like having these kinds of conversations. In fact, I think you know that.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.